Question 1. Investigation of a student's submission for an entrance exam assignment reveals significant similarities to publicly available online content, raising concerns about academic integrity. The student, when questioned, claims they were unaware of the extent of the overlap and that they were working under significant personal stress. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University Admissions Committee? Option A. Immediately disqualify the student from the entrance exam based on the detected similarities, citing a breach of academic integrity. Option B. Request the student to resubmit the assignment with a sworn affidavit confirming their original work, without conducting an independent investigation into the initial submission. Option C. Accept the student's explanation at face value and proceed with their application without further scrutiny, assuming the stress led to an unintentional oversight. Option D. Initiate a formal investigation into potential academic misconduct, following the university's established procedures for handling plagiarism and academic integrity violations, while also considering the student's stated personal circumstances within the framework of the university's policies on appeals and mitigating factors. Correct answer is D. Initiate a formal investigation into potential academic misconduct, following the university's established procedures for handling plagiarism and academic integrity violations, while also considering the student's stated personal circumstances within the framework of the university's policies on appeals and mitigating factors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the student's circumstances with the university's established procedures and ethical obligations to prevent plagiarism and ensure a level playing field for all candidates. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation into the student's claims, adhering strictly to the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations on academic misconduct and appeals. This approach is professionally sound because it upholds the principles of fairness, due process, and academic integrity. By initiating a formal review process, the university demonstrates its commitment to investigating all allegations of academic dishonesty impartially and according to its established policies. This ensures that any decision made is based on evidence and aligns with the university's regulatory framework, protecting the value of its degrees and the reputation of its academic community. An incorrect approach that involves immediately accepting the student's explanation without further inquiry would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would violate the university's regulations on academic integrity by not properly investigating potential plagiarism. It would also be ethically unsound, as it could lead to an unfair advantage for the student and undermine the trust placed in the assessment process by other students and faculty. Another incorrect approach, such as dismissing the student's work outright without a formal investigation or opportunity for the student to present their case, would also be professionally unacceptable. This would contravene the university's policies on student rights and appeals, potentially leading to a breach of natural justice. It fails to provide the student with due process and could result in an unjust outcome, damaging the university's reputation for fairness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, evidence-based approach. First, acknowledge the student's submission and the concern raised. Second, consult the relevant Albstadt Sigmaringen University regulations concerning academic integrity, plagiarism, and student appeals. Third, initiate the formal investigation process as outlined in these regulations, ensuring all parties are informed and have the opportunity to present their case. Fourth, gather all necessary evidence, including original work, submitted drafts, and any supporting documentation. Finally, make a decision based on the findings of the investigation and the university's established policies, communicating the outcome clearly and providing avenues for further appeal if applicable. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that the current entrance examination process at Albstadt Sigmaringen University is perceived as time-consuming and resource-intensive. Which of the following represents the most professionally responsible approach to addressing these findings? Option A. Prioritize cost reduction measures suggested by the study, such as reducing the number of examination subjects or shortening the examination duration to achieve immediate efficiency gains. Option B. Disregard the efficiency study's findings, arguing that the integrity of the entrance examination process is paramount and should not be subject to efficiency-driven modifications. Option C. Immediately implement significant changes to the examination format and scoring to reduce administrative burden, based on the general conclusion of the study that the process is inefficient. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of the study's methodology and data. Identify specific areas where efficiency can be improved without compromising the fairness, validity, or academic rigor of the examination, and propose targeted, evidence-based adjustments in consultation with relevant academic departments and admissions committees. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed review of the study's methodology and data. Identify specific areas where efficiency can be improved without compromising the fairness, validity, or academic rigor of the examination, and propose targeted, evidence-based adjustments in consultation with relevant academic departments and admissions committees. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency goals with the ethical imperative to ensure fair and transparent admission processes. The pressure to demonstrate improved efficiency, as highlighted by the study, could tempt individuals to overlook or rationalize procedural shortcuts that might compromise the integrity of the entrance examination. Careful judgment is required to uphold academic standards and public trust in the university selection criteria. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based assessment of the efficiency study's findings, focusing on identifying specific areas for improvement that do not compromise the fairness or validity of the entrance examination. This includes analyzing the study's methodology, data sources, and conclusions to determine if the proposed changes are objectively beneficial and align with the university's academic mission and regulatory obligations. The justification for this approach lies in adhering to the principles of good governance and academic integrity, which are paramount in university admissions. Specifically, any changes must be demonstrably fair to all applicants, maintain the rigor of the assessment, and comply with the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's internal regulations and any relevant German higher education laws governing admission procedures. This ensures that the pursuit of efficiency does not lead to discriminatory practices or a dilution of academic standards. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement changes based solely on the study's broad conclusion of inefficiency without critical evaluation. This fails to acknowledge the potential for bias in the study itself, or the risk that proposed efficiency measures could inadvertently disadvantage certain applicant groups or undermine the validity of the examination. Such an approach could violate the principle of equal opportunity in education and potentially contravene German higher education regulations that mandate fair and transparent admission processes. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the efficiency study entirely without a proper review. This demonstrates a lack of responsiveness to internal assessments and a potential disregard for the university's commitment to continuous improvement. While preserving the integrity of the examination is crucial, ignoring potential areas for legitimate enhancement could lead to missed opportunities for optimizing resources and processes in a way that does not compromise fairness. This could be seen as a failure in professional responsibility to manage university resources effectively and to engage constructively with internal evaluations. A further incorrect approach would be to focus solely on cost-cutting measures suggested by the study, without considering their impact on the quality or fairness of the examination. This prioritizes financial considerations over academic and ethical responsibilities. Implementing cost-saving measures that reduce the scope or rigor of the examination, or that create barriers for certain applicants, would be a direct violation of the principles of fair assessment and equal access to higher education, potentially leading to legal challenges and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multi-stage approach. First, critically evaluate the findings and recommendations of any internal study, considering its methodology, data, and potential biases. Second, identify specific actionable areas for improvement that align with the university's strategic goals and ethical obligations. Third, consult relevant internal policies, academic regulations, and any applicable external legal frameworks governing admissions. Fourth, engage stakeholders, including faculty, admissions staff, and potentially student representatives, to gather diverse perspectives and ensure buy-in. Fifth, pilot any proposed changes on a small scale, if feasible, to assess their impact before full implementation. Finally, establish clear metrics for evaluating the success of implemented changes, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of fairness, validity, or academic integrity. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that Albstadt Sigmaringen University is facing increasing financial pressures, prompting consideration of significant restructuring of its academic offerings. Which approach best balances the university's financial sustainability with its core mission and regulatory obligations? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment, evaluating potential effects on academic quality, student experience, faculty, and institutional reputation, alongside financial projections, to inform strategic decisions. Option B. Focus solely on market demand for new programs, proposing the introduction of highly vocational courses with minimal consideration for existing academic strengths or faculty expertise. Option C. Rely on informal consultations with key stakeholders to gauge sentiment and make swift decisions based on perceived immediate needs. Option D. Immediately implement cost-cutting measures across all departments, prioritizing those with the lowest enrollment figures to achieve short-term financial stability. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment, evaluating potential effects on academic quality, student experience, faculty, and institutional reputation, alongside financial projections, to inform strategic decisions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's strategic goals and the potential impact on the integrity of its academic programs. The need to balance financial viability with academic excellence requires careful judgment and adherence to established governance principles. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates the potential consequences of the proposed changes on various stakeholders, including students, faculty, and the university's reputation. This approach aligns with good governance practices, which mandate thorough due diligence and risk management before implementing significant strategic shifts, specifically within the framework of Albstadt Sigmaringen University's internal regulations and German higher education law, e.g., Hochschulgesetz Baden-Württemberg. Such an assessment is crucial for ensuring that decisions are evidence-based, transparent, and serve the long-term interests of the academic community. It allows for the identification of potential negative outcomes and the development of mitigation strategies, thereby upholding the university's commitment to quality education and research. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate financial gains without a thorough assessment fails to uphold fiduciary duties. This would likely violate internal university statutes that require responsible stewardship of resources and a commitment to academic standards. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on external market trends without considering the specific context and mission of Albstadt Sigmaringen University overlooks the unique responsibilities of an academic institution. This could lead to decisions that undermine the university's core values and educational mission, potentially contravening principles of academic freedom and institutional autonomy as enshrined in higher education legislation. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or informal consultations bypasses the structured and objective evaluation required for significant strategic decisions, thereby failing to meet the standards of due diligence expected of university leadership. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with clearly defining the problem or opportunity. This is followed by gathering relevant information, identifying potential solutions or courses of action, and then conducting a thorough impact assessment for each. The assessment should consider financial, academic, ethical, and reputational implications, referencing applicable regulations and internal policies. Finally, the decision should be made based on the comprehensive analysis, with clear justification and a plan for monitoring outcomes. Question 4. When evaluating an applicant's submitted academic transcripts for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, and a significant discrepancy is noted between the stated grade point average and the individual course grades listed, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure adherence to university admission regulations and ethical standards? Option A. Proceed with the application review by accepting the stated grade point average at face value, assuming it is a clerical error by the applicant. Option B. Contact the applicant to request clarification and supporting documentation for the discrepancy, and if necessary, verify the information with the issuing educational institution. Option C. Overlook the discrepancy to expedite the admissions process, prioritizing the timely review of all applications. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to the unsubstantiated discrepancy, as it raises concerns about academic integrity. The correct answer is D. Immediately reject the application due to the unsubstantiated discrepancy, as it raises concerns about academic integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications, particularly when faced with potentially incomplete or misleading information. The core difficulty lies in determining the appropriate level of scrutiny and intervention without unfairly penalizing applicants or compromising the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness, transparency, and adherence to the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's established admission regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough, evidence-based review of the applicant's qualifications, seeking clarification directly from the applicant and relevant institutions where discrepancies arise. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and fair process mandated by university admission guidelines. Specifically, it upholds the university's responsibility to verify the authenticity and completeness of submitted documents and information, ensuring that all applicants are assessed on a level playing field according to the stated criteria. This approach prioritizes factual accuracy and procedural fairness, minimizing the risk of admitting unqualified candidates or rejecting deserving ones based on incomplete data. An incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection based on a single unsubstantiated discrepancy fails to uphold the principle of fair process. It bypasses the opportunity to investigate and clarify, potentially leading to an arbitrary decision. This could violate university policies that require a reasonable opportunity for applicants to address any concerns or provide missing documentation. Another incorrect approach, which is to overlook the discrepancy due to time constraints or a desire to expedite the process, compromises the integrity of the admission system. This neglects the university's duty to ensure that all admitted students meet the required academic standards, potentially admitting individuals who are not adequately prepared for the program. This can lead to future academic difficulties for the student and a diminished reputation for the university. A further incorrect approach, such as accepting the information at face value without any verification, demonstrates a lack of due diligence. This exposes the university to risks of fraudulent applications and can undermine the credibility of the admissions process. It fails to adhere to the implicit or explicit requirement within university regulations to verify submitted credentials. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, identify the discrepancy or concern. Second, consult the relevant university admission regulations and guidelines to understand the prescribed procedures for handling such issues. Third, gather all available information and evidence related to the discrepancy. Fourth, communicate with the applicant to seek clarification or additional documentation, providing a reasonable timeframe for response. Fifth, if necessary, contact the issuing institutions to verify the information. Finally, make a decision based on the gathered evidence and in strict adherence to the university's policies, documenting the entire process. Question 5. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive evaluation of potential initiatives. Considering the specific regulatory framework for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, which of the following approaches to assessing the impact of a proposed new interdisciplinary degree program would best ensure compliance and responsible implementation? Option A. Conducting a detailed analysis of the program's potential student enrollment and projected revenue, alongside a review of existing faculty expertise. Option B. Performing a thorough impact assessment that examines the program's alignment with German higher education laws, university statutes, and potential effects on existing academic structures and resources. Option C. Prioritizing the speed of program launch by implementing the initiative based on a preliminary assessment of its perceived academic innovation. Option D. Relying on informal feedback from a select group of senior faculty members regarding the program's academic merit and market demand. The correct answer is A. Conducting a detailed analysis of the program's potential student enrollment and projected revenue, alongside a review of existing faculty expertise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the university's strategic planning process must not only align with its academic mission and financial sustainability, but also strictly adhere to the specific regulatory framework governing higher education institutions in Germany, as defined by the Albstadt Sigmaringen University Entrance Exam Guidelines. The challenge lies in balancing innovative strategic initiatives with the imperative of compliance, ensuring that all proposed changes are legally sound and ethically defensible within the German higher education context. Careful judgment is required to anticipate potential conflicts between strategic goals and existing regulations, and to proactively address them. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that systematically evaluates the potential consequences of proposed strategic initiatives on all relevant stakeholders and operational areas, with a specific focus on compliance with German higher education law and university statutes. This approach is professionally sound because it ensures that strategic decisions are informed, risk-aware, and legally compliant. By proactively identifying potential regulatory hurdles or conflicts, the university can adapt its strategies to ensure adherence to the Albstadt Sigmaringen University Entrance Exam framework, thereby safeguarding its operational integrity and reputation. This aligns with the ethical obligation of public institutions to operate within the bounds of the law and to serve the public interest responsibly. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate perceived benefits without a comprehensive regulatory review fails to uphold the principle of legality. This could lead to the implementation of strategies that are in direct violation of German higher education regulations, potentially resulting in sanctions, legal challenges, or the invalidation of the strategic initiatives themselves. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on internal operational efficiency, neglecting external regulatory impacts, overlooks the interconnectedness of the university's operations with its legal and societal environment. This can lead to unforeseen compliance issues and a failure to meet external accountability standards. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or informal consultations, rather than a structured impact assessment, risks overlooking critical regulatory requirements and potential negative consequences, thereby demonstrating a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility. Professionals in strategic planning within a regulated environment should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant legal and regulatory landscape. This should be followed by a comprehensive impact assessment that considers all potential consequences, including legal, financial, operational, and ethical dimensions. Stakeholder consultation, particularly with legal counsel and compliance officers, is crucial. Finally, strategies should be iteratively refined to ensure alignment with both strategic objectives and regulatory mandates, with a mechanism for ongoing monitoring and review. Question 6. Analysis of a proposal to modify the Albstadt Sigmaringen University Entrance Examination to incorporate a new section based on current industry trends, as suggested by an external advisory board, requires a comprehensive evaluation of its potential consequences. Which of the following approaches best reflects the professional and ethical responsibilities of the university in assessing this proposal? Option A. Implement the changes on a trial basis for one admission cycle and gather feedback from a small group of students and faculty to gauge their reception. Option B. Conduct a detailed impact assessment that evaluates the proposal's effects on the exam's fairness, validity, reliability, and potential for bias across diverse applicant pools, and consult with faculty and academic committees to gather input on pedagogical and assessment implications. Option C. Immediately approve the proposed changes to demonstrate responsiveness to industry feedback and to ensure the exam remains relevant to current professional demands. Option D. Prioritize the cost-effectiveness and administrative ease of implementing the new section, assuming that industry relevance automatically translates to improved assessment quality. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed impact assessment that evaluates the proposal's effects on the exam's fairness, validity, reliability, and potential for bias across diverse applicant pools, and consult with faculty and academic committees to gather input on pedagogical and assessment implications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic mission and the potential for external influence to compromise its integrity. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeper, and any perceived bias or unfairness can erode public trust and the institution's reputation. Careful judgment is required to ensure the exam process remains objective and aligned with the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's stated goals for admitting qualified students. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented assessment of the proposed changes' impact on the fairness, validity, and reliability of the entrance examination. This includes considering how the changes might affect different applicant groups, whether they align with the learning outcomes the exam aims to measure, and if they introduce any unintended biases. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes the principles of fairness and academic integrity, which are foundational to any educational institution's admissions process. It also aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation that university entrance exams are designed to be objective measures of a candidate's suitability for higher education. An incorrect approach would be to implement the changes without a formal impact assessment, perhaps due to time constraints or pressure from external stakeholders. This fails to uphold the professional duty to ensure the exam's integrity and could lead to discriminatory outcomes or a reduction in the exam's predictive validity. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns raised by the faculty without proper investigation, assuming their objections are merely resistance to change. This disregards the expertise of those directly involved in teaching and assessing students, and misses an opportunity to identify genuine flaws in the proposed modifications. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the perceived benefits of the changes, such as increased efficiency or cost savings, without adequately weighing these against potential negative impacts on fairness and academic rigor. This demonstrates a failure to consider the broader ethical implications and the university's core mission. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves 1. Clearly defining the problem and the proposed changes. 2. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their perspectives. 3. Gathering objective data and evidence related to the potential impacts. 4. Conducting a thorough risk assessment, considering both positive and negative consequences. 5. Evaluating proposed solutions against established ethical principles and any applicable university regulations or guidelines. 6. Documenting the entire process and the rationale for the final decision. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with professional standards and institutional values. Question 7. Compliance review shows that Albstadt Sigmaringen University is exploring new methods to analyze student performance data to identify areas for curriculum improvement and to support personalized learning pathways. The proposed analysis involves collecting and processing a wide range of student data, including academic records, engagement metrics from online learning platforms, and potentially demographic information. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for such data processing? Option A. Proceed with the data analysis, assuming that general consent for university enrollment covers all subsequent data processing for academic improvement purposes, and focus primarily on the potential benefits for student learning outcomes. Option B. Implement the data analysis using anonymized data only, without conducting a DPIA or seeking specific consent, as anonymization inherently removes privacy concerns. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential risks to student privacy, ensuring data minimization, purpose limitation, and obtaining explicit, informed consent for the specific data processing activities. Option D. Begin the data analysis immediately to gain insights quickly, and address any potential data protection concerns or consent issues retrospectively as they arise. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential risks to student privacy, ensuring data minimization, purpose limitation, and obtaining explicit, informed consent for the specific data processing activities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic mission and the need to adhere to strict data protection regulations, specifically the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, as it applies within the European Union, which is the governing framework for Albstadt Sigmaringen University. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to leverage student data for improving educational outcomes and research with the imperative to safeguard individual privacy and consent. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any data processing is lawful, fair, and transparent, and that individuals' rights are respected. The correct approach involves a thorough impact assessment that prioritizes data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust security measures, all while ensuring explicit and informed consent from students. This aligns with the core principles of GDPR, particularly Article 35, which mandates data protection impact assessments, DPIA, for processing likely to result in a high risk to the rights and freedoms of natural persons. By systematically identifying potential risks and implementing mitigation strategies, this approach ensures compliance with legal obligations and ethical standards, fostering trust and protecting the university from potential legal repercussions and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential academic benefits without adequately considering the privacy implications would fail to meet GDPR requirements. This would constitute a breach of Article 5 of GDPR, which outlines principles such as lawfulness, fairness, transparency, purpose limitation, data minimization, accuracy, storage limitation, integrity, and confidentiality. Another incorrect approach that bypasses the need for explicit consent for certain types of data analysis, relying instead on a broad, generalized consent for all university activities, would violate Article 7 of GDPR, which sets strict conditions for consent, requiring it to be freely given, specific, informed, and unambiguous. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to secure the data, as mandated by Article 32 of GDPR, would expose the university to significant risks of data breaches and associated penalties. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant legal and ethical obligations. This involves proactively identifying potential data processing activities, assessing their necessity and proportionality, and then conducting a comprehensive DPIA. The process should involve all relevant stakeholders, including data protection officers, IT security, and academic departments. Mitigation strategies should be developed and documented, and ongoing monitoring and review should be implemented to ensure continued compliance and adapt to evolving risks. Question 8. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of unauthorized access to applicant data during the online submission phase of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, with a potentially high impact on applicant privacy and the integrity of the admissions process. Which of the following actions best reflects the immediate, compliant, and professionally responsible next step? Option A. Inform all applicants that their data may be at risk and advise them to take personal precautions. Option B. Conduct a formal data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to systematically evaluate the risks and determine appropriate mitigation measures in line with GDPR and BDSG. Option C. Rely on the existing IT security infrastructure, assuming it is sufficient to mitigate the identified risks. Option D. Immediately deploy advanced encryption protocols across all applicant data storage systems without further analysis. The correct answer is B. Conduct a formal data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to systematically evaluate the risks and determine appropriate mitigation measures in line with GDPR and BDSG. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The university entrance exam context implies a need for fair and transparent assessment processes, but also a responsibility to handle applicant data with care. The risk matrix, a common tool in risk management, highlights potential threats and their impact, necessitating a proactive and compliant response. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process for assessing the impact of the identified risks on applicant data and the integrity of the entrance examination. This includes identifying all potentially affected data categories, evaluating the likelihood and severity of unauthorized access or disclosure, and determining the potential consequences for applicants and the university. Crucially, this assessment must be conducted in accordance with the data protection regulations applicable to Albstadt Sigmaringen University, which would likely be the German Federal Data Protection Act, Bundesdatenschutzgesetz (BDSG), and the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, given the university's location. The university has a legal and ethical duty to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard personal data. Therefore, A thorough impact assessment is a prerequisite for determining the necessary protective measures and ensuring compliance. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the identified risks without a formal assessment, assuming they are minor or unlikely to materialize. This fails to acknowledge the university's legal duty of care and the potential for significant harm to applicants, such as identity theft or discrimination, and reputational damage to the university. It also contravenes the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation inherent in data protection laws. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement extensive, costly security measures without first understanding the specific risks and their potential impact. While proactive security is important, an untargeted approach can be inefficient and may not address the most critical vulnerabilities. This also bypasses the requirement for a documented risk assessment, which is often a regulatory expectation. A further incorrect approach would be to consult external IT security experts without involving the university's data protection officer or legal counsel. While external expertise is valuable, the ultimate responsibility for data protection compliance rests with the university. Without internal oversight and legal guidance, the assessment might overlook specific regulatory requirements or ethical considerations pertinent to educational institutions. The professional decision-making process should involve 1. Recognizing the identified risks as potential threats to data security and integrity. 2. Initiating a formal data protection impact assessment (DPIA) as mandated by GDPR for high-risk processing activities, which the handling of applicant data for entrance exams often constitutes. 3. Engaging relevant stakeholders, including IT, legal, and the data protection officer, in the assessment process. 4. Documenting the assessment findings, including identified risks, their potential impact, and proposed mitigation measures. 5. Implementing and regularly reviewing the effectiveness of these mitigation measures. Question 9. Research into the potential consequences of a student's alleged academic misconduct prior to a formal determination of guilt is being requested by a student at Albstadt Sigmaringen University. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response by the university administration, strictly adhering to the university's regulatory framework? Option A. Dismiss the student's request for an impact assessment, stating that such assessments are only conducted after a formal finding of guilt. Option B. Immediately provide the student with a detailed impact assessment of potential academic and personal consequences, as requested. Option C. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged academic misconduct, and if a violation is confirmed, proceed with the university's established disciplinary procedures, which may include an impact assessment. Option D. Conduct an impact assessment based solely on the student's written submission regarding the alleged misconduct. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged academic misconduct, and if a violation is confirmed, proceed with the university's established disciplinary procedures, which may include an impact assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The challenge lies in discerning whether the student's request for an impact assessment is a genuine attempt to understand the consequences of their actions, or a tactic to mitigate responsibility for potential academic misconduct. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's regulations while providing a fair process for the student. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation into the student's academic record and the specific circumstances surrounding their request. This includes reviewing university policies on academic integrity, plagiarism, and the procedures for handling alleged misconduct. The university must then engage in a fact-finding process to determine if any regulations have been violated. If a violation is found, the university should then proceed with the established disciplinary procedures, which may include an impact assessment of the consequences of the proven misconduct on the student's academic standing and the integrity of the program. This approach is justified by the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulatory framework, which mandates adherence to principles of academic honesty and due process. The university has a responsibility to maintain the credibility of its degrees and to ensure a fair and equitable learning environment for all students. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the student's request for an impact assessment without any prior investigation. This fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity by potentially allowing a student to circumvent accountability for proven misconduct. It also bypasses the established disciplinary procedures, undermining the fairness and consistency of the university's regulatory framework. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's request outright without considering the possibility of a genuine misunderstanding or a desire to learn from a mistake. This could be perceived as an overly punitive stance and may not align with the university's educational mission to guide students towards ethical academic behavior. While academic integrity is paramount, a balanced approach that includes educational components where appropriate is often part of a comprehensive disciplinary process. A further incorrect approach would be to conduct an impact assessment solely based on the student's self-reported information without independent verification. This would be insufficient for a fair and objective assessment and could lead to an inaccurate understanding of the situation, potentially resulting in an inappropriate outcome. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the relevant university regulations and policies. This involves identifying the specific rules that may have been violated and the prescribed procedures for addressing such violations. The next step is to gather all relevant facts objectively, ensuring that all parties have an opportunity to present their case. Based on the established facts and regulation, a determination should be made regarding whether a violation has occurred. If a violation is confirmed, the subsequent steps, including any impact assessment, must be conducted in accordance with the university's established disciplinary framework, ensuring fairness, consistency, and accountability. Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates a slight, intermittent fluctuation in network activity during the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance examination, which falls within a range previously identified as a minor deviation, but not a critical alert according to internal university guidelines. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Report the fluctuation to the examination proctors and instruct them to observe candidates for unusual behavior. Option B. Continue monitoring the system closely and document the fluctuation for a potential follow-up review if it escalates. Option C. Immediately halt the examination and initiate a full system audit. Option D. Ignore the fluctuation as it is within the acceptable minor deviation range. Correct answer is B. Continue monitoring the system closely and document the fluctuation for a potential follow-up review if it escalates. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge in interpreting and acting upon data from a monitoring system within the context of Albstadt Sigmaringen University's entrance examination regulations. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between a minor anomaly that requires observation and a significant deviation that necessitates immediate intervention or reporting, all while adhering strictly to the university's specific examination guidelines. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to avoid overreacting to insignificant fluctuations or, conversely, underreacting to potential breaches of examination integrity. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of the observed data against established thresholds and protocol defined by the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam regulations. This approach prioritizes a measured response, beginning with internal verification and escalation only if the data indicates a clear violation or a significant risk to the examination's fairness. This aligns with the principle of due process and avoids unnecessary disruption to the examination process. The regulatory justification stems from the need to maintain the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination, as stipulated by the university's examination board and any associated internal policies. Ethical considerations demand a balanced approach that protects the validity of the examination without unfairly penalizing candidates based on ambiguous data. An incorrect approach would be to immediately halt the examination based on a single, unverified data point. This fails to acknowledge that monitoring systems can generate false positives or minor deviations that do not constitute a breach. Such an action would likely violate university regulations regarding the conduct of examinations, which typically outline specific procedures for handling irregularities. It also demonstrates a lack of professional judgment by not allowing for a period of observation or further investigation. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the anomaly entirely, assuming it is insignificant without any form of internal review. This poses a significant regulatory and ethical risk. If the anomaly, however minor it initially appears, is indicative of a systemic issue or a deliberate attempt to compromise the examination. Failing to investigate could lead to a compromised examination outcome and a breach of the university's commitment to fair assessment. This approach neglects the responsibility to uphold the integrity of the examination process. A third incorrect approach would be to report the anomaly to external authorities without first conducting an internal assessment as per university protocols. This bypasses established internal procedures and could lead to unnecessary escalation and potential reputational damage for the university. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured process. First, understand the specific regulations governing the examination. Second, analyze the observed data in light of these regulations. Third, consult internal guidelines for handling anomalies. Fourth, take appropriate action based on the verified severity of the situation, escalating only when necessary and according to established procedures. Question 11. Comparative studies suggest that while universities strive for diverse student bodies, the integrity of entrance examinations remains paramount. Considering the specific regulatory framework and guidelines for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, which of the following approaches best upholds both academic integrity and fair admissions practices when faced with a situation where a candidate's family has strong connections to the university administration? Option A. Strictly adhering to the established examination criteria and evaluation rubric, ensuring all candidates, regardless of background or connections, are assessed objectively based on their performance and submitted qualifications. Option B. Discreetly adjusting the scoring of the candidate's examination to ensure they achieve a score that meets the minimum admission threshold. Option C. Providing the candidate with advance notice of specific topics that will be heavily emphasized in the examination to help them focus their preparation. Option D. Prioritizing the admission of candidates with strong connections to the university administration, even if their entrance examination scores are slightly below the average. Correct answer is A. Strictly adhering to the established examination criteria and evaluation rubric, ensuring all candidates, regardless of background or connections, are assessed objectively based on their performance and submitted qualifications. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for prospective students. The university entrance exam for Albstadt Sigmaringen University is designed to assess a candidate's aptitude and preparedness, and any deviation from fair and objective evaluation undermines this purpose. The core of the challenge lies in maintaining ethical standards while navigating the complexities of admissions processes. The correct approach involves a thorough and unbiased assessment of all candidates based on the established criteria of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam. This means evaluating each applicant's submitted materials and performance in the exam itself without external influence or preferential treatment. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it upholds the principles of fairness, equality, and meritocracy, which are fundamental to academic institutions. Specifically, it aligns with the university's stated admission policies and the overarching regulatory framework governing higher education entrance examinations in Germany, which emphasizes objective evaluation and non-discrimination. An incorrect approach that involves providing advance information about exam content to a specific candidate fails because it directly violates the principle of equal opportunity. This action constitutes an unfair advantage, compromising the integrity of the examination process and potentially leading to the admission of less qualified individuals. Ethically, it is a breach of trust and professional conduct. From a regulatory standpoint, such an action could be seen as a violation of examination regulations designed to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. Another incorrect approach, which involves altering a candidate's exam results to meet a perceived need for a higher score, is also professionally unacceptable. This is a form of academic dishonesty and misrepresentation. It undermines the validity of the assessment and deceives both the university and the candidate about their true capabilities. Regulatory frameworks for university admissions strictly prohibit falsification of records and require accurate reporting of assessment outcomes. Finally, an approach that prioritizes admitting candidates from specific backgrounds or with certain connections, regardless of their performance on the entrance exam, is ethically and regulatorily flawed. While universities may have diversity goals, these should be pursued through legitimate and transparent means, such as contextual admissions policies that consider a broader range of factors alongside academic merit, rather than by compromising the integrity of the entrance examination itself. This approach risks violating principles of equal treatment and merit-based selection, which are often enshrined in educational laws and university statutes. Professionals in university admissions must adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations, ethical principles, and the university's mission. This involves understanding the specific legal and ethical guidelines governing entrance examinations, maintaining strict confidentiality, ensuring objective evaluation, and resisting any pressure to compromise the integrity of the process. When faced with difficult decisions, professionals should consult relevant policies, seek guidance from superiors or ethics committees, and always act in a manner that upholds the credibility and fairness of the institution. Question 12. Stakeholder feedback indicates that some applicants to Albstadt Sigmaringen University perceive the entrance examination as overly challenging in specific subject areas, leading to concerns about potential bias against certain educational backgrounds. The university is considering how to respond to this feedback while upholding the academic standards and fairness of its admissions process. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical considerations for university entrance examinations in Germany? Option A. Establish a committee of academic experts and psychometricians to conduct a thorough review of the examination's content, difficulty, and alignment with the university's curriculum, using objective data to identify any areas requiring adjustment to ensure fair and accurate assessment of all candidates' aptitude. Option B. Immediately revise the examination questions in the perceived challenging areas to reduce their difficulty, based on the anecdotal feedback received from applicants, to improve overall applicant satisfaction and reduce perceived bias. Option C. Implement a system where applicants can provide detailed feedback on specific questions during the examination, and use this feedback to adjust scores in real time to mitigate perceived unfairness. Option D. Focus on developing supplementary preparatory materials that address the perceived challenging areas, without altering the examination itself, to help future applicants better prepare, thereby indirectly addressing the feedback. The correct answer is A. Establish a committee of academic experts and psychometricians to conduct a thorough review of the examination's content, difficulty, and alignment with the university's curriculum, using objective data to identify any areas requiring adjustment to ensure fair and accurate assessment of all candidates' aptitude. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the practical pressures of student recruitment and retention. The university entrance exam is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, and any deviation from its established protocols can undermine its validity and fairness. The challenge lies in balancing the need to uphold rigorous examination standards with the desire to attract and retain a diverse student body. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any feedback mechanisms are implemented in a way that does not compromise the integrity of the examination process or create an unfair advantage for certain groups of applicants. The correct approach involves a systematic and transparent review of the examination's content and format, informed by objective data and expert analysis, to identify areas for improvement that align with the university's academic mission and admission criteria. This approach prioritizes fairness, validity, and the enhancement of the examination's ability to accurately assess candidates' suitability for study at Albstadt Sigmaringen University. It respects the regulatory framework governing university admissions and examinations by focusing on evidence-based improvements rather than subjective influences. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on anecdotal student complaints without rigorous validation risks introducing bias and compromising the examination's psychometric properties. This could lead to a less effective assessment tool, potentially admitting students who are not adequately prepared or unfairly excluding those who are. Such an approach would fail to adhere to the principles of fair and equitable assessment, which are fundamental to the regulatory framework of university entrance examinations. Another incorrect approach that involves altering examination content based on perceived difficulty without a structured review process is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the established procedures for curriculum development and assessment validation, potentially leading to a curriculum that is not aligned with the learning objectives or that inadvertently favors students with specific prior exposure rather than general aptitude. This undermines the principle of standardized assessment. Finally, an approach that prioritizes student satisfaction over the academic rigor of the examination would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. While student experience is important, the primary purpose of an entrance examination is to assess academic readiness. Compromising this core function for the sake of immediate feedback would erode the credibility of the university and its degrees. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the problem and its potential impact on academic integrity and fairness. 2. Gathering objective data and expert opinions to inform the decision. 3. Consulting relevant university policies and regulatory guidelines. 4. Developing a range of potential solutions, evaluating each against established criteria for validity, fairness, and adherence to regulations. 5. Implementing the chosen solution with transparency and a plan for ongoing evaluation. Question 13. Regulatory review indicates that during a recent Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance examination, a candidate was observed using a small, unapproved note card containing formulas. The examination regulations for Albstadt Sigmaringen University explicitly state that no external written materials are permitted. Considering the strict adherence required to the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's examination framework, which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of the examination process? Option A. Disqualify the candidate from the examination immediately due to the clear violation of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's examination regulations regarding external written materials. Option B. Consult the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's official examination regulations to determine the precise procedure for handling such violations and apply the stipulated consequences. Option C. Confiscate the note card and allow the candidate to continue the examination, documenting the incident for potential future reference without immediate penalty. Option D. Issue a verbal warning to the candidate and allow them to continue the examination, assuming it was an unintentional oversight. Correct answer is A. Disqualify the candidate from the examination immediately due to the clear violation of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's examination regulations regarding external written materials. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's stated commitment to academic integrity and the potential for a student to exploit a loophole in the examination regulations. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the examination rules in a manner that upholds fairness and prevents undue advantage, while also considering the student's perspective and intent. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine misunderstanding and deliberate circumvention of rules. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University specific examination regulations concerning the use of external resources during assessments. This approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes adherence to the established legal and regulatory framework governing the examination. By consulting the official documentation, the examiner ensures that their decision is based on the precise stipulations of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University, thereby upholding academic integrity and the fairness of the examination process for all students. This aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain a credible and equitable assessment environment. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume the student acted with malicious intent and to impose a penalty without a proper investigation. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of a genuine error or misunderstanding of the rules, which could lead to an unfair outcome for the student. Furthermore, it bypasses the established procedures for handling potential academic misconduct, which typically involve a review of the evidence and an opportunity for the student to respond. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the incident entirely, assuming it was a minor oversight. This would be a failure to uphold the examination regulations and could set a precedent for future students to disregard rules, thereby undermining the integrity of the examination system. It neglects the university's duty to enforce its own regulations consistently. A further incorrect approach would be to apply a generic penalty without considering the specific context or the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's prescribed disciplinary actions for such infractions. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in understanding the specific regulatory framework and could result in a disproportionate or inappropriate consequence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the potential violation. Recognize when an action by a student might contravene examination regulations. 2. Consult the relevant regulations. Immediately refer to the specific official examination rules and guidelines of Albstadt Sigmaringen University. 3. Gather information. Collect all relevant facts and evidence pertaining to the incident. 4. Assess intent and impact. Evaluate whether the action was intentional and what impact it had on the examination's fairness. 5. Apply regulations consistently. Make a decision based strictly on the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations, ensuring fairness and consistency. 6. Follow due process. If a violation is confirmed, follow the university's established procedures for addressing academic misconduct, which may include informing the student and providing an opportunity for them to present their case. Question 14. Consider a scenario where a student at Albstadt Sigmaringen University is working on their thesis and discovers highly relevant research conducted by an external research group. The student believes incorporating these findings directly into their thesis would significantly strengthen their argument. The student is unsure about the university's specific regulations regarding the presentation of such external research within a thesis and whether it needs to be explicitly framed as external or if it can be integrated as part of their own analytical framework. Which of the following actions best upholds the academic integrity standards of Albstadt Sigmaringen University? Option A. Proactively consult with the thesis supervisor or relevant university department to clarify the specific guidelines for incorporating and attributing external research within a thesis. Option B. Integrate the external research findings directly into the thesis, assuming that acknowledging the source in a general bibliography is sufficient. Option C. Present the external research findings as if they were the student's own original discoveries, with only a brief mention of the external group in passing. Option D. Directly copy sections of the external research and present them as their own analysis, with no explicit citation within the text. The correct answer is A. Proactively consult with the thesis supervisor or relevant university department to clarify the specific guidelines for incorporating and attributing external research within a thesis. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work and the university's academic integrity policies. The core difficulty lies in balancing the encouragement of student initiative with the imperative to prevent plagiarism and ensure fair assessment. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate collaboration or seeking feedback and unauthorized copying or misrepresentation of work. The correct approach involves the student proactively seeking clarification from the professor regarding the specific guidelines for presenting external research in their thesis. This demonstrates a commitment to academic honesty and adherence to Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations on academic integrity and proper citation. By engaging in open communication, the student ensures they understand the boundaries of acceptable practice, thereby avoiding potential violations. This aligns with the university's emphasis on original work and the ethical obligation of students to attribute all sources appropriately. An incorrect approach would be to present the research findings as entirely their own without any acknowledgement of the external source. This constitutes academic dishonesty, specifically plagiarism, which is a direct violation of Albstadt Sigmaringen University's academic integrity policy. It misrepresents the student's contribution and undermines the principle of fair assessment. Another incorrect approach would be to simply include the external research without seeking any guidance, assuming it is acceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an insufficient understanding of academic conventions and university regulations. It risks unintentional plagiarism or misrepresentation, even if not malicious. A further incorrect approach would be to present the external research as a direct quote without proper attribution or context, even if the source is acknowledged. While acknowledging the source is a step in the right direction, failing to integrate it appropriately within their own analysis and argument, or to clearly delineate it as external material, can still lead to misrepresentation of their own intellectual contribution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a proactive stance on understanding academic expectations. Students should always err on the side of caution when unsure about the originality or attribution of their work. This includes thoroughly reviewing university guidelines on academic integrity, seeking clarification from instructors or academic advisors when necessary, and meticulously citing all sources, even for ideas or data that are not directly quoted. The goal is to ensure that all submitted work accurately reflects the student's own effort and understanding, while respecting the intellectual property of others. Question 15. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual cursor movement and intermittent screen flickering during a candidate's Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance examination, based solely on the Albstadt Sigmaringen University examination regulations. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response? Option A. Immediately flag the candidate for academic misconduct due to suspicious activity. Option B. Assume the monitoring system is malfunctioning and disregard the observed anomalies. Option C. Consult with other proctors for their subjective opinions on the candidate's behavior. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of the specific monitoring data against the defined categories of academic misconduct in the Albstadt Sigmaringen University examination regulations, seeking any corroborating evidence of prohibited actions. The correct answer is A. Immediately flag the candidate for academic misconduct due to suspicious activity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between ensuring academic integrity and respecting student privacy. The university entrance exam at Albstadt Sigmaringen University is governed by specific regulations designed to uphold fairness and prevent academic misconduct. The monitoring system's output requires careful interpretation to avoid misjudging student actions, which could have severe consequences for their academic future. The challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate study methods and prohibited forms of assistance, all within the bounds of the university's established rules. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the monitoring system's data, in conjunction with the specific provisions of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University examination regulations concerning academic misconduct. This approach prioritizes a fact-based assessment, seeking corroborating evidence and considering the context of the observed behavior. It adheres to the principle of due process, ensuring that any accusations of misconduct are substantiated by clear violations of the university's rules. This aligns with the ethical imperative to act fairly and impartially, protecting both the integrity of the examination process and the rights of the students. An incorrect approach would be to immediately flag any deviation from a perceived norm as academic misconduct without further investigation. This fails to acknowledge that the monitoring system may capture innocent actions, or that the university's regulations may permit certain forms of interaction or resource utilization that appear unusual at first glance. Such an approach risks unjustly penalizing students and undermines the principle of proportionality in disciplinary actions. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the monitoring system's findings entirely, assuming it is prone to errors or overzealous in its detection. While monitoring systems can have limitations, ignoring their output without a reasoned basis would be a dereliction of duty to uphold examination standards. This approach neglects the university's investment in such systems and the potential for them to genuinely identify breaches of academic integrity. A further incorrect approach would be to rely on anecdotal evidence or personal judgment rather than the documented examination regulations. Professional decision-making in this context must be grounded in the established legal and regulatory framework of Albstadt Sigmaringen University. This framework provides the objective criteria for evaluating student conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulations governing the examination. 2. Carefully analyzing the data provided by the monitoring system. 3. Corroborating any potential misconduct with additional evidence if available and permissible. 4. Consulting the relevant university authorities or committees for guidance and decision-making. 5. Ensuring that any disciplinary action is proportionate to the offense and is based on clear violations of established rules. Question 16. The investigation demonstrates that a student wishes to present a project that incorporates significant portions of publicly available research papers and also utilizes an AI tool to generate explanatory text for their findings. The student has not yet formally cited any of these sources or acknowledged the AI's contribution. What is the most appropriate initial step for the university to take to address this situation? Ensuring adherence to academic integrity principles. Option A. Grant the student permission to proceed with their presentation as planned, assuming that the use of publicly available research and AI tools is generally acceptable for student projects. Option B. Suggest that the student consult with a peer who has successfully completed similar projects to understand best practices for incorporating external materials and AI tools. Option C. Inform the student that the use of AI-generated text and extensive reliance on existing research papers is not permitted for their project, and instruct them to start over with entirely original content. Option D. Advise the student to thoroughly review the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations on academic integrity, plagiarism, and the acceptable use of AI in academic work, and to resubmit their proposal with clear citations and acknowledgement of all sources, including AI-generated content. The correct answer is D. Advise the student to thoroughly review the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations on academic integrity, plagiarism, and the acceptable use of AI in academic work, and to resubmit their proposal with clear citations and acknowledgement of all sources, including AI-generated content. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work and the university's academic integrity policies. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the encouragement of student initiative with the imperative to uphold standards against plagiarism and unauthorized use of materials. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's regulations concerning academic integrity, intellectual property, and the appropriate use of external resources. This approach prioritizes adherence to established guidelines, ensuring that any presentation of work, whether individual or collaborative, is conducted ethically and in compliance with university policy. Specifically, it requires understanding the definitions of plagiarism, the requirements for proper citation, and the university's stance on the use of AI-generated content or pre-existing materials without proper attribution. The ethical justification lies in fostering an environment of honest scholarship and respecting the intellectual contributions of all. An incorrect approach would be to immediately approve the student's request without verifying compliance with university regulations. This fails to uphold the university's commitment to academic honesty and could inadvertently condone or facilitate academic misconduct. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's request outright without exploring potential avenues for ethical presentation, which could stifle student initiative and discourage engagement with academic work. A third incorrect approach would be to provide a vague or noncommittal response that leaves the student uncertain about the acceptable boundaries, thereby increasing the risk of unintentional rule breaking. Each of these incorrect approaches neglects the fundamental responsibility to ensure that all academic activities align with the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's established ethical and regulatory framework. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, clearly identify the core issue and potential ethical or regulatory conflicts. Second, consult the relevant university policies and guidelines. In this case, Albstadt Sigmaringen University's academic integrity and intellectual property regulations. Third, assess the student's request against these regulations, considering all aspects of their proposal. Fourth, communicate a clear, reasoned decision to the student, explaining the basis for approval or denial and providing guidance on how to proceed ethically and in compliance with university standards. Question 17. The analysis reveals that a proposal has been made to subtly allow candidates for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam to receive pre-approved hints on certain question types, arguing this will improve overall candidate performance and thus the university's perceived quality. Which approach best upholds the integrity of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance examination process? Option A. Strictly adhering to the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's official examination regulations, ensuring all candidates are assessed solely on their own knowledge and abilities, without any form of external assistance during the examination period. Option B. Allowing proctors to offer minor, informal verbal cues to candidates who appear to be struggling with specific questions, with the justification that this is a form of supportive invigilation. Option C. Introducing a tiered examination system where candidates who demonstrate exceptional prior academic records are given access to a supplementary, optional clarification session immediately before the exam. Option D. implementing a system where candidates are discreetly provided with generalized study guides that cover the exact topics and question formats appearing on the exam, framed as pre-exam preparation support. The correct answer is D. Implementing a system where candidates are discreetly provided with generalized study guides that cover the exact topics and question formats appearing on the exam, framed as pre-exam preparation support. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between academic integrity and the pressure to achieve positive outcomes for a university's reputation. The entrance exam for Albstadt Sigmaringen University is designed to assess a candidate's genuine aptitude and preparedness. Introducing external assistance, even if perceived as beneficial for the university's rankings, fundamentally undermines the fairness and validity of the assessment process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the ethical standards of academic institutions. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established examination regulations and guidelines of Albstadt Sigmaringen University. This means ensuring that all candidates undergo the assessment process without any form of unauthorized external support. This approach is justified by the university's commitment to academic integrity, fairness to all applicants, and the principle of meritocracy. The regulations are in place to guarantee that admission is based on a candidate's own abilities and knowledge, preventing any undue advantage. An incorrect approach would be to facilitate or overlook the use of external assistance during the entrance exam. This action would constitute a direct violation of the university's examination rules and ethical codes. Such a failure compromises the integrity of the admissions process, devalues the achievements of honest candidates, and potentially admits individuals who lack the necessary foundational skills, ultimately harming the academic standards of the university. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize perceived institutional benefit, e.g., higher enrollment numbers or improved rankings, over the established regulatory framework. This demonstrates a disregard for ethical principles and the long-term reputation of the institution, as it prioritizes short-term gains at the expense of fundamental fairness and academic rigor. Professionals in academic admissions and examination administration should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves a clear understanding of the university's examination policies, a commitment to fair and impartial assessment, and the courage to uphold these standards even when faced with pressure to deviate. When faced with a dilemma, professionals should consult relevant guidelines, seek clarification from superiors if necessary, and always act in a manner that preserves the integrity and credibility of the institution. Question 18. Cost-benefit analysis shows that providing a specific candidate with advanced insights into the likely thematic areas and question styles for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, beyond what is publicly disclosed, could increase their chances of admission. However, this approach deviates from the university's stated commitment to a standardized and impartial assessment. Considering the regulatory framework governing university entrance examinations at Albstadt Sigmaringen University, which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity and fairness? Option A. Provide the candidate with general advice on study strategies and direct them to the official preparatory materials available to all applicants. Option B. Decline to offer any assistance to the candidate, citing a lack of university policy on individual exam preparation support. Option C. Suggest that the candidate seek external tutoring services that may offer specialized preparation for the exam. Option D. Share specific details about the exam's content and structure with the candidate to maximize their preparation. The correct answer is A. Provide the candidate with general advice on study strategies and direct them to the official preparatory materials available to all applicants. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between academic integrity and the desire to support student success. The university entrance exam for Albstadt Sigmaringen University is designed to assess a candidate's foundational knowledge and aptitude. Introducing external, unauthorized assistance, even if perceived as beneficial for a specific candidate, undermines the fairness and validity of the assessment process for all applicants. The core ethical and regulatory obligation is to ensure a level playing field and to uphold the standards of the examination. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the examination regulations of Albstadt Sigmaringen University. This means ensuring that all candidates are evaluated solely on their own merits and performance during the exam, without any form of external influence or pre-exam coaching that goes beyond the officially sanctioned preparatory materials or information sessions. This upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity, which is a cornerstone of academic admissions. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams typically emphasizes impartiality and the prevention of any advantage that is not available to all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to provide specific, tailored guidance to a particular candidate that goes beyond general advice or publicly available information. This creates an unfair advantage, violating the principle of equal treatment. Such an action could be seen as a breach of the examination's integrity, potentially leading to accusations of favoritism or even academic misconduct. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request for assistance, thereby failing to uphold the university's commitment to supporting prospective students within the established guidelines. While not directly violating exam integrity, it misses an opportunity to guide the student towards legitimate preparatory resources. The professional decision-making process in such a situation requires a clear understanding of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's examination rules and ethical guidelines. When faced with a request that could compromise these principles, the professional should first identify the potential conflict. Then, they should consult the relevant regulations to determine what constitutes permissible support versus impermissible assistance. The decision should prioritize fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures, even if it means declining a request that seems helpful in the short term, but could have negative long-term consequences for the integrity of the examination process. Question 19. To address the challenge of ensuring the authenticity and equivalence of submitted academic transcripts from an international applicant for the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, which of the following actions best aligns with the university's regulatory framework and principles of academic integrity? Option A. Immediately request official confirmation of the applicant's previous academic performance directly from the issuing institution, cross-referencing this with recognized international educational databases, and if discrepancies are found, initiate a formal inquiry with the applicant, providing them an opportunity to submit further clarification or evidence. Option B. Accept the submitted transcripts as presented, assuming they are accurate, and proceed with the application evaluation without further verification to expedite the admissions process. Option C. Reject the application outright based on a perceived irregularity in the transcript's formatting, without attempting to verify its authenticity or contacting the applicant for clarification. Option D. Forward the applicant's transcripts to a third-party credential evaluation service without informing the applicant, and base the admission decision solely on the service's report, regardless of the university's internal verification procedures. The correct answer is A. Immediately request official confirmation of the applicant's previous academic performance directly from the issuing institution, cross-referencing this with recognized international educational databases, and if discrepancies are found, initiate a formal inquiry with the applicant, providing them an opportunity to submit further clarification or evidence. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic settings where students may inadvertently or intentionally misrepresent their qualifications or prior learning. For the Albstadt Sigmaringen University entrance exam, the primary regulatory framework to consider is the university's own statutes and examination regulations, as well as relevant German higher education law concerning admission and academic integrity. The challenge lies in balancing the university's need to ensure the integrity of its admissions process and the academic standards of its programs with fairness to the applicant. A deep analysis requires understanding the specific provisions within these regulations that govern the verification of submitted documents and the consequences of misrepresentation. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of verification, adhering strictly to the university's established procedures for assessing foreign qualifications or prior learning. This typically includes requesting official documentation, cross-referencing information with recognized educational bodies, and, if discrepancies arise, initiating a formal inquiry with the applicant. The regulatory justification stems from the university's duty to uphold academic standards and prevent fraudulent admissions, as mandated by its internal regulations and German higher education law. Ethical considerations also dictate a fair process, giving the applicant an opportunity to clarify or provide further evidence before a final decision is made. An incorrect approach that involves immediate rejection without any attempt at verification or clarification would be procedurally unfair and potentially violate the applicant's right to due process as outlined in university regulations. Failure to follow established procedures is a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. Another incorrect approach, such as accepting the submitted documents at face value without any due diligence, compromises academic integrity and exposes the university to admitting students who may not meet the required academic standards, thereby failing in its regulatory duty. Finally, an approach that involves making assumptions about the applicant's intent or the validity of the documents without a formal investigation is unprofessional and undermines the credibility of the admissions process. Professionals in academic admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This framework involves 1. Understanding the specific university policies and legal requirements for admissions and document verification. 2. Meticulously documenting all steps taken during the verification process. 3. Communicating clearly and transparently with applicants regarding required documentation and potential issues. 4. Escalating complex cases or significant discrepancies to the appropriate university authorities for review. And 5. Ensuring that all decisions are based on objective evidence and in accordance with established procedures, thereby safeguarding academic integrity and fairness. Question 20. The review process indicates that an international applicant for the Bachelor of Engineering program at Albstadt Sigmaringen University has submitted transcripts from a recognized institution in a country with a different educational system. The admissions committee is considering whether the applicant's prior coursework is sufficiently equivalent to the German Abitur or its recognized international equivalents as stipulated by the university's admission regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework for university admissions in Germany and the specific guidelines of Albstadt Sigmaringen University? Option A. Assess the applicant's qualifications based on a general equivalency assessment provided by an international credential evaluation service, assuming this is sufficient for German universities. Option B. Consult with admissions officers from other German universities to determine their standard practice for evaluating similar international qualifications, assuming a consensus will meet Albstadt Sigmaringen's requirements. Option C. Accept the applicant based on a strong personal statement and recommendation letters, assuming these can compensate for any minor discrepancies in academic qualifications. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of the applicant's transcripts, comparing the content, duration, and grading system of their previous studies directly against the specific requirements for the Bachelor of Engineering program, as outlined in the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's admission regulations and relevant German higher education law. The correct answer is A. Assess the applicant's qualifications based on a general equivalency assessment provided by an international credential evaluation service, assuming this is sufficient for German universities. Explanation. The review process indicates a potential misinterpretation of the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's admission regulations concerning prior academic qualifications for international applicants. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of the specific German higher education law and university-specific guidelines, rather than general international equivalency standards. The admissions team must navigate the precise wording of the regulations to ensure fair and compliant assessment. The correct approach involves a thorough examination of the applicant's academic transcripts against the specific requirements outlined in the Albstadt Sigmaringen University's admission regulations for the chosen program. This includes verifying if the applicant's previous coursework and grading system are recognized as equivalent by German higher education standards and, more importantly, by the university's internal assessment criteria. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the governing regulatory framework, ensuring that all admission decisions are legally sound and consistent with the university's established policies, thereby upholding academic integrity and fairness. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on general international credential evaluation services without cross-referencing their findings with the university's specific admission criteria. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the university's authority to define its own admission standards and may lead to the admission of candidates who do not meet the precise academic prerequisites stipulated by German law and the university's internal regulations. Another incorrect approach is to assume that a qualification recognized by another German university automatically meets Albstadt Sigmaringen's requirements. This is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it ignores the principle of institutional autonomy in setting admission standards and could lead to inconsistent and potentially unfair admission practices across different universities. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the applicant's stated motivation over the formal academic qualifications, assuming that strong personal statements can compensate for unmet regulatory requirements. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the admission process, which is primarily based on demonstrable academic achievement as defined by the relevant legal and institutional frameworks. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the precise regulatory framework governing admissions, which in this case is the German Higher Education Act, Hochschulgesetz, and the specific admission regulations of Albstadt Sigmaringen University. They must then meticulously compare the applicant's documentation against these specific requirements, seeking clarification from university legal counsel or the relevant academic department if ambiguities arise. The decision-making process should be guided by a commitment to regulatory compliance, fairness, and the academic standards of the institution.